Get ready to listen to the greatest heavy metal podcast of all time! Heavy Metal War Stories with your host, Stevie Peavy.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Stevie Peavy, everybody's favorite guy, back with another episode of Heavy Metal War Stories. I'm sorry it's been so long since the last one. Won't happen again. I can't promise I can get them out weekly, but it won't be as long as your wait for this one. Anyway, one of the problems was I had an excellent guest lined up. We have a lot of crazy, interesting people on Heavy Metal War Stories. Some of them get into fights. Some of them have just been doing a lot of cool things in rock and roll. So I started chatting with this one lady who's a huge metal fan, had a lot of interesting thoughts on some bands, including Rammstein. So I figured I'd do a Rammstein episode with her. And the more I got to know her, the more I sort of found out that she was an escort and toured all over doing her escorting. And seemed like she did a lot of drugs and alcohol. So that was going to make for a pretty interesting guest, I thought. But, even though she readily agreed to be on the show, impossible to nail her down. You'd think escort who likes to take a lot of drugs would be very responsible, very easy to get on the show, but apparently not the case. And she did suggest that we should do the episode in person. I felt I declined that. I didn't know what would go on in person, but little scary even for me. So anyway, I have got a killer guest on for you today. And you all know the format of Heavy Metal War Stories. First thing we do with the guest is we talk about legendary heavy metal band. And the second thing we do is we talk about what the guest's been doing. But this guy, he's pretty much been in more legendary heavy metal bands than any other musician that I could even think of. I mean, you're talking Quiet Riot, Ozzy, Dio, Yngwie, Blue Oyster Cult. Or I don't even know. Probably more that I'm spacing on right now. But we're just going to spend the whole episode talking about all the different bands he's been in, the rock stars and superstars that he's played with. So let's get right to it as I introduce my new guest on Heavy Metal War Stories, legendary heavy metal bassist Rudy Sarzo. Rudy, how are you?
I'm doing terrific. How about yourself?
I'm doing excellent, and I wanted to thank you for being on my show.
My pleasure.
You've been in so many bands guys like Ozzy and Randy, there's so much that you were right in the thick of. You were in Quiet Riot with Randy Rhoads, and that was a local band at the time. And then he left to form Ozzy or join Ozzy. And then he brought you into the band. How did that come about? How was why were they looking for a new bassist, and why did Randy pitch you to Ozzy, do you think?
You know what? The reason why they were looking for a new bassist, I never really sat down with Sharon or Ozzy, who were basically the decision makers on that, and really asked them why they were looking for a new bassist or even a new drummer.
Right.
That was in my place to be asking such questions. So I felt very blessed just to be the guy that came in, because it could have been anybody else, and I'm just very happy that it was me. So right. That's an interesting question. I'm pretty sure it's a very elaborate one with a lot of information, but since I wasn't there when the actual decision was made to get a different rhythm section, I really cannot give you the answer that you're looking for.
Right. Well, you have mentioned the past, and that even though your pictures on Diary of a Madman had already been recorded, and so basically when you and Tommy came in the band, was it just time to hit the ground running and just do shows right away in support of the record?
That is the best way to put it. Yes, we hit the ground running. I think we had maybe less than 10 days before the Blizzard of Oz American tour, North American tour, because we also tour in Canada, began in 1981.
And how did you gel? I mean, if this is a brand new band, it has no time to get together. Did you feel that, just instantly everybody had a good chemistry on stage, or even, in rehearsals?
Yeah, especially musically. There's something very interesting happened because when you got two individuals who have a playing style that really gels such as Randy Rhoads and Tommy Aldridge, especially live, they both lean forward when they play, which really works in a large venue such as arenas or stadiums and such. So basically for me, my job was to go along with what was going on musically.
Sure.
So it was it was very easy. I just had to be aware that this is the sound and the style of the band. So so I just basically paid a lot of attention to what was going on musically and just fit right in.
Right. Well, I mean, with the tribute album that came out later, everybody can hear how great that band sounded. But
interesting enough, but the tribute album was recorded during the Blizzard of Oz tour. Mm-hmm. And what happened was that the band, by the Diary of the Madman tour, it had even gotten tighter and grown musically. But unfortunately, it was not captured with a professional recording.
Right.
Such as tribute.
Right. Well, and also at the same time, there was a lot of controversy with Ozzy by then, with all the antics and Satanism allegations and the Alamo and all that.
Yeah, but you know what? It wasn't any more controversial than what anybody like Alice Cooper or Kiss had at the time. So it was just it was a sign of the times, basically how Middle America was looking at heavy metal, hard rock, influencing the youth.
Right. So was there any interesting stories of clashes with protesters or police or anything?
Oh yeah, there were always protesters outside. That was, but it never really got in the way, except that when Ozzy pissed on the Alamo,
right,
and that really ruffled some feathers, and some people in Texas. So we were getting some death threats. So during that period, I personally made sure that I kept away from Ozzy on stage because
really,
I didn't want any stray bullets, hitting me or.
Sure, that must have been crazy, but obviously, it was. It feels to me, and you can tell me if you feel that this is an accurate description, but it feels like when Ozzy started out, and even though he was a legend in Black Sabbath, it's this brand new band, and it seemed like you guys, at least for the his first two records where Randy was in the band, it was like a lot of hard work, and you're playing large venues, but it didn't seem like there was it just seemed like a really, an organization trying to make it. And it was only kind of in the later on where, Ozzy was teamed up with Motley Crue or something, that it became more of that, more about like the madness and all that kind of stuff. Whereas the early time just seems like a lot of hard work and a lot of, like kind of the focus on the music really.
Yes, there was a lot of focus on the music, and actually, we had some really great bills. I mean, I know that Ozzy teamed up with Motley Crue later on, but I was not in the band
sure.
when that happened. But
right.
But during the '81 and '82 tours, Blizzard and Diary, we had Motorhead, we had Def Leppard. Also in the Diary of the Madman tour, we had UFO, and they were always great bills, a night fill of great music from the beginning to the end. And I think what happened was that from Blizzard, and especially Diary of the Madman, with Biting the Head off the Bat,
right.
that helped to kind of start building that imagery of Ozzy being a madman and, being a total, rock and roll crazy guy, basically. And that's something that, with publicity and marketing, they've been perpetuating that. But it's not any different than what they did with Alice Cooper and and even Kiss and stuff like that. Even Kiss, Kiss of course did not have that type of an image as far as well, at least not Gene or Paul about being crazy on the road. But Gene had a different image. It was like having being the guy with the most groupies on the road and stuff like that. So, especially in those days, back in the 80s, and, bands were always looking for some kind of a shtick,
definitely,
to help them perpetuate, get some publicity out there. But, remember, there was no internet, no social networking. So, to get publicity, it was very, very, very tough. So you had to really give him something to talk about.
Right.
There was no TMZ, no paparazzi, anything like that. So everything you did was, if you did something today, it would show up in some magazine maybe 6 months later, because that's how long it took the publications to go to print.
Right, right. Well, Ozzy is obviously your boss, and he's obviously a legendary guy. I don't think you have that much of a reputation of being, involved in too much madness. Was it difficult to be with a guy who was drinking a lot, and even though he called the shots, he was also kind of the loosest cannon in the group?
Basically, even though Ozzy had a major influence in what was going on in his career, he left it pretty much up to Sharon, who really, really called the shots. I mean, she was the mastermind of Ozzy's success, and the whole band, everything, his whole career. And, she just let him do his magic up on stage, just get up there and be Ozzy, and, keep him out of trouble as much as she could. So, it was pretty much basically what I call controlled chaos.
Right. So, there is rumors that I've heard in the metal community, and that's all I usually consider it to be is rumors. But since you were one of the people that were right in the thick of it, that and that Ozzy didn't have that as much to do with the creation of the music as some other artists who are of his stature. They say Geezer wrote a lot of the lyrics in Sabbath, and Ozzy and Bob Daisley had a lot Randy and Bob did a lot on the first two records. Based on your knowledge, how did you feel about Ozzy's contributions?
Yeah, since I never got the opportunity to go into a production environment with Ozzy to work on an album, I cannot really give you an honest answer. Because I joined the band, we toured for 2 albums that were already recorded, and then I left.
Right.
I left after Randy died. I mean, they treated me fantastic. They were incredible with me. The only reason why I left was because it was very painful to go on stage without Randy being there. And, I played exactly the same songs and do the same set and the same production.
Well,
and,
if we can talk about that a little bit, because one of the most interesting things is that, Randy died, which is such a tragic loss, but I don't know if Ozzy was contractually obligated or if it was just the best thing to do to keep everybody, kind of working. But you guys were back on the road like right away, almost after that happened.
Yeah,
Isn't
yeah,
that true?
Yeah. We went back on the road within a matter of a week to 10 days. What happened was that the Sharon wanted to keep Ozzy occupied. I mean, the worst thing that would have happened to Ozzy was just to get off the road and then drink even more and do more drugs. Right. So in order to keep him from killing himself, basically, she's just decided to keep the tour going.
And I know you had Bernie Torme and maybe George Lynch that were really quick replacements, or at least potentials.
No, actually, Bernie Torme went on the road with us for 2 or 3 weeks, and then Brad Gillis.
And I've always liked Brad's playing on "Speak of the Devil." I always thought that was a underrated live record.
Player. Yeah, well, we really didn't have that much time to prepare,
right,
for it. I believe we had a week to maybe 5 to 7 days to actually learn all the material, except for, of course, the 3 songs that we were already playing on tour, which were Children of the Grave, Iron Man, and Paranoid.
Right.
The rest of the material we had to learn in a matter of days.
Yeah, I kind of felt...
Brad came in and basically saved the day, because, he was... You have to take into consideration that back in 1982, very few guitar players played in the style of Randy. Nowadays, that's like heavy metal 101. But back in 1982, very few guys could play like that. And Brad Gillis came recommended by Pat Troll's brother, who actually saw Brad Gillis play in a cover band called the Alameda All-Stars, which later turned into Night Ranger.
Right.
And they were doing some covers of Ozzy and say, hey, this guy can play like, in the style of Randy. So he recommended him. He came in, and that's all we needed, just to be able to finish the tour with some dignity.
Yeah, definitely. Now, I haven't mentioned it, but you have a new book out called Off the Rails, which discusses your time with Ozzy and Randy. And, I mean, everybody loves Randy and everybody loves Ozzy. But I have to go into my favorite story in the book, if you don't mind. And that's when, after you were looking for new guitar players, and I guess Ozzy found Mark Terrain, who went on to go to the Bullet Boys. And he came in and I guess was auditioning and didn't do that well. And I don't know too much about Tommy Aldridge except that he's a great drummer. But apparently, the way you put him in the book, he's has an unbelievable way with words. And so I guess after the audition, he says something to the effect of, "Damn, that's some new kind of information coming out of your guitar, boy."
That's some new information. Yeah, that was one of Tommy's favorite Tommy isms. He was full of isms,
Yeah.
He would and he always kept it fresh. He's, I guess, he's got the country wit about him, So he always comes out with all these gems, And he always did. I mean, I play with him, and I play with him with Whitesnake. Tommy's one of the funniest people. If you have a conversation with him, I mean, it is incredible.
Yeah, so that was definitely a great story, and I guess the response from the guitarist, "Well, it sounds good to me."
Yeah, well, what can I say?
Right.
It's Mark Terrain was when at the time there was a buzz about Mark because he had a band called Terrain.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm talking a buzz about in Los Angeles. People were like checking him out, and as a matter of fact, I went down to the Troubadour, which is like a local, rock spot club in Los Angeles and in Hollywood. And I went out to check out Mark, and at the same time, Paul Stanley was there to check him out because that's where the kids were looking for another guitar player.
Ah.
So there was a big buzz about Terrain at the time because he was supposed to be a combination of David Lee Roth meets Eddie Van Halen.
Sure.
And, one thing is to be doing your own material, and another thing is to actually, fit into somebody else's shoes about what they're playing. It's different,
Right.
So I'm pretty sure that Mark was really good at being Mark, but when it came time to being Randy, or like I mentioned, only very, very few people could actually, it's not even a matter of filling the shoes because they've never been filled, but it's just a matter of, being able to capture the essence of what Randy was all about.
And then, obviously you're not a guitar player, but I would say, speaking of yourself, is there anybody in rock who is been able to jump into legendary band after legendary band?
I'm not a guitar player, but I play with enough iconic guitar players to know
exactly.
I've not been in a coma all this time.
Right, but you certainly, I can't. I mean, if I had to think of anybody who could jump into a band and obviously succeed with a new set of players or a new style, it would be you with all the bands you've been in.
My motto is I'm joining the band is not joining me. So I look at the situation and say what is missing here, and I try to provide it to the fullest of my capabilities.
Well, let's move on to Quiet Riots. Like you said, without Randy, you didn't feel like you'd wanted to stay in Ozzy. And and Quiet Riot were obviously they were putting out their first record that was going to be released in America, and you of course knew them because you'd been in the band before. Was there a thought like this is going to be really big, or was it more let's try it out and see if it works?
No, as a matter of fact, to me, I saw the band, the connection with Quiet Riot, of course, besides of working with Kevin. But see, I had already worked with Kevin in Dubrow.
Mm-hmm.
So that band was more like Dubrow than it was like Quiet Riot. It was just the name Quiet Riot was actually the only thing that was really kept. The whole spirit and the essence of the band was completely different. As a matter of fact, if you listen to go on YouTube and watch any of Quiet Riot videos with Randy, it was a totally completely different band.
Mm-hmm.
Frankie played, brought in a certain style into the band, and Carlos did too. So, it was just to me that band could have been called anything else, and it would still been, that's what the band was all about. We weren't trying to be a continuation of the Randy Rhoads Quiet Riot at all.
Right.
You know.
But you know, you guys in the studio, and you got the songs, and those other cool LA bands are coming out now. When you were recording, did you kind of go, hey, hopefully this will be as a decent record, or hopefully it'll somewhat succeed? Was there any indication like while you're recording it that like, wow, this could be like the #1 record, this could be huge?
No, we were shooting for 50,000 copies.
Yeah, wow.
We figure if we could sell 50,000 copies, we could, maybe get on an opening act on a tour and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, remember we were the first band out of that Sunset Strip crowd to actually have a #1 album.
Yeah.
I mean, on a debut. We actually, as a matter of fact, in the whole history of Billboard, we were the only band ever to do that. To have a U.S. release, debut U.S. release that went to #1.
Wow.
Debut, U.S. release. So, I mean, it's hard to anticipate the outcome when you're the very first one to do it.
Sure.
Because we weren't shooting for that. That wasn't our goal.
Yeah.
It happened, but that's not what we set our sights on. We actually set our sights on making the most honest record that we could.
Uh-huh.
And to me that was the outcome. So the major success of the album to me is a byproduct of the outcome. A very honest album.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So obviously having such a successful debut record brings up an interesting set of circumstances in that you don't have that much material yet. You kind of are bigger than some of the bands you might be headlining over you. There's like this mania with the hit single. Like how do you feel, like you've been in so many bands, how was that kind of strange or difficult to deal with, like while you were going out, or was it even difficult to deal with?
Well, actually, we had a very strong supporting act set.
Mm-hmm.
So when we open up for ZZ Top or
Black Sabbath
or Iron Maiden or Black Sabbath or even Loverboy or Scorpions, it was very strong. Mm-hmm. But once we got into the situation with the promoters, because sometimes it just businesses just driven by the industry itself. When they start saying, "Listen, we want to have you guys as headliners," we were trying to stretch it out and turn that into at least a hour 15 set in order to have a solid headlining set. Right. Whereas the album was basically 40 minutes, so you have to start taking some drum solos or outtakes of songs that did not make the record, stuff like that. So, it got a little thin. But fortunately, people were so much into the band that really that was not even an issue, So that was good. So but that is a problem that is faced by any band that has a successful first record. You start going out there headlining, and it's like you don't have enough songs. Or at least you might have enough songs, but not enough songs that people are familiar with.
Right, definitely. Yeah, I saw Motley Crue's final Shout at the Devil show in London, and they did every song from that record, I think, and then a couple from their first record. But it was a great show, but you could definitely see that they're like almost doing all the songs they possibly had.
Yeah.
So Quiet Riot, now that lasted for 2 records at least with you, I think, and then you decided to move on.
Yeah.
And
I think it was pretty mutual. They didn't want me there, and I just didn't want to be in a place where people didn't want me there. So it's like a divorce, Right. It's like a relationship that wasn't working out anymore, and that was it.
Mm-hmm.
Just move on.
And then, Whitesnake came along not too long after that, and how obviously there, I think the Whitesnake record that had just been done, there was a definite conscious decision to change it up. It wasn't gonna be this British bluesy band. It was definitely going for the American market. So
that was pretty much masterminded by the management, and especially the A&R for Geffen Records, John Coladner, mm-hmm. who also was the mastermind behind the return of Aerosmith.
Oh yeah, sure. And so was this? Did did it feel like, it was just really being set up for a big push? Like this is going to be, it feels like, probably when you joined Ozzy, they're like, let's get, we got a bunch of guys, let's take it on the road. This thing feels like it was almost like had an entire team behind it. We got a great record. We want the best players. We want the best look. We want the best videos. Let's do it.
Yeah. Yeah. You know what a lot of people might not be aware of is the fact that I was asked to join Whitesnake along with Tommy Aldridge before the album was recorded.
Right.
And what kept me personally from joining the band was the fact that Whitesnake was the opening act for Quiet Riot in 1984. And I had seen the personality conflicts between John Sykes and David Coverdale. And I had just left a volatile situation. So I just didn't want to be part of another one. That's the last thing I wanted to do. So I declined on the offer to join the band. And what happened was a couple of years later, because it took about 2 years to make that record. And by then, the band that actually played on the album did not exist anymore.
Right.
Especially John Sykes, he was not there anymore. So when I got the call, actually from Coladner, John Coladner, to go in and make the video for Tommy and I to go in and make the video, and Sykes was not in the band anymore. So I felt it was safe that volatile, situation did not exist anymore. So that's when we say, okay, I think it's pretty safe, to join Whitesnake, or at least, go in there to make the videos.
Right. Definitely.
So, so actually what I'm saying is that probably if Tommy and I would have gone in there to make the record, we would have probably not wound up being on, beyond that.
Right.
As member of Whitesnake. Yeah.
And that's just because those two guys are just kind of vying for creative control, or they just didn't like each other? All I know is what was going on during the tour, because I would go and visit, hang out with everybody, and it was all this stuff going on. It did not affect me personally because I was not a member of the band. I was just hanging out with the guys from Whitesnake. So I really cannot point a finger at what was going on, but I just knew that it was not a healthy place to be at the time. When I joined Whitesnake, and along with Vivian Campbell, Adrian Vandenberg, and of course Tommy, it was great. It was fantastic, great memories. I was treated incredibly well, and it was a band. Right.
And all purposes, even business-wise, it was a band, So I have nothing but great things to say about my time in Whitesnake.
And then, so how did Adrian Vandenberg last that long? Or I think he got a hand injury fairly shortly after.
Well, yeah, even though Adrian did not get to record on the album that he wrote with David Coverdale because he injured his wrist, an injury that even lingers today.
Wow.
He got to play on tour. Yeah, we toured in 1990, and Steve Vai, that was the Steve Vai version of the band.
Right. So there's another unbelievable guitar legend. I know you've played with Steve Vai, you played with Adrian, Randy, Brad Gillis, Yngwie. So
Yngwie, Tony MacAlpine also. Between Quiet Riot and Whitesnake, I was in a band with Tony MacAlpine. Which, I don't know if a whole lot of people know about him, but I would say he's as far as musical geniuses, he's the closest thing.
Really?
If not the musical genius. Yeah.
And so, I almost wanted to leave Randy out of the equation because he's such a legend. But with all these unbelievable guitar legends, it's not so much of who's the best, but who playing style you fit in with the best. Like, who would you say that you really like to play with guitar and bass kind of tandem? I love
playing with all of them.
Yeah.
I mean, there's something that I learned from each one of them. I would say, with Steve is it was the most, Steve, his influences, to me, step outside of the realm of just being a musician or a guitar player, because he's an incredible businessman, and also he's a multitasker. I learned a lot about multitasking touring with Steve Vai, because when we toured together, not only was he a member of Whitesnake, but also he was promoting his own solo career.
Yeah.
And yeah, he was launching Passion and Warfare, and he was working on the videos. He was working on the book, the sheet music, the book that accompanied the CD. He had a strategy, which very, very few musicians ever do. Including myself at the time. My strategy was just to, play that night.
Right.
Whereas Steve Vai, he had a 5-year plan, a 10-year plan, and so on. He still does today. That's why he's been able to be such a successful not only musician but also businessman.
Right.
I'm G3 being another layer to his incredible vision. But then again, his mentor was Frank Zappa,
Right.
who was another visionary, guy with a great strategy, business-wise and musical too. So.
Yeah, it is interesting to see like the kind of guys who can just keep it going, and the kind of guys you only hear from for a couple of years, and then that's that. And I think
I don't know. The guys that I play with, they pretty much kept it going. The guys that are with us.
definitely.
I would say Tony MacAlpine kept it going. He's got his own strategy, but he's and I hate to get into something that it's outside of the box of what we're talking about here. But I can tell you, from people in the industry, it was kind of hard for them to, and the industry, the problem with the industry, the way it used to be, is that they put people in a box.
Yeah.
As far as marketing, as far as selling, and the industry, the mainstream industry, had a problem knowing how to sell and who to sell to somebody like Tony MacAlpine, because he was not your typical Anglo-Saxon musician. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So when you have, it's kind of like if Jimi Hendrix would have returned back, it would have been around in the 80s, they would have had a little bit of a hard time putting them into the box, that all the musicians were in,
Right.
And I think that's what happened with Tony.
So, well, I mean, definitely he has his fans as a guitar legend. I know that.
Oh, absolutely. But I think his ethnic background had a lot to do with the fact that he's not a more popular or well-known musician as far as the masses, because they just didn't know what to do with him. Outside of, put it this way, an artist like the last Afro-American popular artist to really hit it big, I would say Lenny Kravitz.
Right.
Was the last signing, because before that Prince was already settled in, and Michael Jackson and the whole that. And I think that, I know we're going into a whole different area here, but I think that has been what chopped rock and roll at the root of the tree so far. I mean, this is why I think we're stuck.
Yeah.
We're stuck is because there's been a division, a split, musical split with the Afro-American, the urban artists going into hip-hop, and very few going into, R&B, rock. There has not been, and let's be honest, the roots of rock and roll is the blues and R&B.
Right.
And if we chop it at the root, the tree is dying, basically. We need to get back to that.
Yeah, definitely.
So I know that I'm getting off track here.
Well, I think you obviously were a musician in the 70s and the 80s, so it predated MTV, and then when MTV came around, you could really see the effects on image, being as paramount as anything else.
Absolutely. I mean, MTV had a tough time, trying to, what are we doing with this band called Living Colour?
Right.
They're playing rock and they're black. I mean, and they just, and again, it's with videos, even more than with audio, it's the visual impact. So how are we going to put Living Colour followed by Poison or Motley Crue? And, it just didn't fit in, you know what I mean? So, unfortunately, the industry had a lot to do with its own musical downfall.
And most people, I don't think, give people enough credit for how broad their tastes are. You know, you'll look at a playlist and it'll just be a hard rock station or a classic rock station. But if you look at anybody's iTunes at home, they've got a ton of different weird stuff on there almost. You know, no one is as rigid as I think programmers believe they are.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. But, I think that now, if you leave it up to the fans to really discover artists and discover music and so on, I think the fans are just interested in talent and the story that the individual has to tell.
Right.
Not as much as what they look like or their ethnic background.
Yeah, definitely. So I want to go a little further with your career because there's so many notable artists that you worked with. I know after Whitesnake, I know you went back to Quiet Riot.
Mm-hmm. And we had the reunion.
Yes, and that was in the 90s when hard rock wasn't doing quite as, it wasn't as huge as it was. How was Quiet Riot doing when you came back?
Yeah, there was a certain movement that you could see that it was going, the cycle was going away from the grunge and that Seattle thing, going back more towards the mainstream.
Yeah.
And to be honest with you, I was so glad when grunge came in.
Oh yeah.
To be honest, I the essence, I am a rhythm section player.
Right.
And the essence of what the music that I grew up with, 60s and late 60s and 70s music, where you had such great rhythm sections. Behind every bass player, there was always a great drummer.
Right.
From Tim Borger to Carmine Appice, and you had the guys from Yes, and I'm just going to name bands. Led Zeppelin, Cream, whatever. Every great bass player had a great drummer right there, rhythm section, and we lost that in the 80s. The productions, we had a lot of drum machines, even though I did not get to record with the drum machines, but that was the sound. That was the influence. I got to record with Frankie Banali and Tommy Aldridge. Our contribution was really minimized.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Down to playing eighth notes. I mean, there was so much. I played with so much great talent that was underused.
Right, because
it was so great.
I love heavy metal, and and people like say, "Oh, grunge killed it" and stuff. But it's like Dr. Feelgood was a 4 million selling record, but it had 6 power ballads on it and a very glossy production. And then you get like Soundgarden was much closer to Black Sabbath.
Not only that, if you read the making of most of those big records, you're going to find things such as guys recording like the kick drum by themselves and then playing a snare on another track, it's like, or Def Leppard going in, and I let me tell you, I got this from the guys in Def Leppard because we were friends. They would go in the studio and record a string at a time.
I think I've heard something like that.
Yeah, if you're doing can, playing a song, a chord, instead of playing the chord, they would just do one string of the chord.
Yeah.
And then they would come back and do the other string. It's like, wait a minute. This is not how the magic is created here.
Definitely.
So that whole period, as far as rhythm sections and making records, they sounded great. They sounded good, but was it magical? I don't think so. So to me, the magic of a band going in one room and making an album and communicating, which is what music is all about, is communication, is language. That was really lost in the 80s.
Yeah.
I have to tell you that, yes, we did record Metal Health like that. There was a bunch of guys in a room, very small room, and there will be some overdubs here and there, and that was it.
Right.
I did go in and record Come and Feel the Noise as an overdub because I wasn't in the band at the time that it was recorded. I went in, that's another story.
Huh.
But there was magic in there. So basically, what we're getting back to what the Seattle sound. They bands like Soundgarden, Stone Temple Pilots, Pearl Jam. I would say more Soundgarden and Stone Temple Pilots than any of the other bands. And even Nirvana. It was great. You felt that there was a magic in there of guys going in one room and just making a record, rather than just getting a bunch of overdubs or being told just to play, single notes. I mean, 8 notes, quarter notes, and blah blah blah. Just keeping it, pumping. There was a lot of riffs, a lot of melodies going on, and just going back to the essence of what it was like in the '70s.
Definitely. And so, when the Quiet Riot came back, and so how was that fun or interesting or different from the original time when you were in Quiet Riot?
There was some interesting times. The last time when I joined the band, the last time that I have played with Quiet Riot, we were still on top. Mm-hmm. And we were doing at least theaters and arenas and so on. So it was kind of an attitude of like, let's work our way up again. At least that was my attitude. Let's try to take this back to where Quiet Riot, at least, we felt that it belonged, and it was interesting. It was interesting because there was an essence of being comfortable at a certain level that is not exactly what I felt that Quiet Riot's potential.
Right.
Quiet Riot's potential was bigger than the complacency that certain people in the band had.
Well, what do you think was holding you guys back?
No. Sometimes people are more comfortable at the bottom or in the middle than they are at the top. And it kind of, I had that sense that it felt that way to me personally. Whereas I am never happy to be in the middle or in the top. I mean, even though I do enjoy the journey to getting to the top.
Yeah.
I'm more, this is, the top is where the final destination should be.
Right.
Of any group. Always works towards that, being the best that you can be. That's how you get to be a rock star. Mm-hmm. To be your personal best 24/7, no matter what you do. And to me, that's the philosophy. That's not just, it just doesn't apply only to musicians. It applies to everybody.
Right.
No matter what you do in life,
So, but there, that was the reunion. All 4 of the Mental Health members were in the band at the time, and I know towards the end, I'm not sure who. I know Carlos and you both left. I don't know which one left first.
No,
but,
actually, it fell apart.
It just fell apart.
It just fell apart. Yeah, it wasn't Carlos and me leaving. It just the whole thing disintegrated.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. And then from there, was Dio next on your agenda?
Actually, no. It was Yngwie Malmsteen.
Yngwie, okay. Wow.
Yeah, I joined Yngwie for the Attack tour in the U.S. It's something that musically I needed. I needed to be in a situation that I was challenged musically.
Right.
And I just needed to play. I just needed to have that freedom to play as many notes as I could without being. It was mandatory. But put this way, you had to play as many notes as you could.
Right.
And to me, that was musical heaven.
Really?
And oh yeah, you kill it, man. Yeah, and it was like, it was wonderful. And Yngwie is such an incredible musician, and we got along really well, and so did everybody else in the band.
I've heard there's rumors of him being hard to deal with bandmates. I mean, he's had so many.
Listen, not at the time I was in the band, and you have to understand, when you're joining somebody's band, you are joining the band. The band is not joining you.
Definitely.
So you have to respect all the parameters,
right.
Of that come along with you joining something that has been already established for a long time, and respect the individual's vision, and my purpose for being there was to be the best bass player I could be for the band, Yngwie Malmsteen, and it was great. It was great. I mean, just go out there and play your ass off without anybody saying, well, you're playing too much or you're playing whatever, It was like, yeah.
If anything, they'd say you're not playing enough, right?
Well, I mean, that never happened, but yeah, it could happen.
Right.
Sure.
Wow. So how come that ended?
Very simple. I really wanted to make a record,
Mm-hmm.
and traditionally, Yngwie plays bass on his album.
Oh.
And which is, again, it was very challenging because usually what he does is he doubles the guitar line with the bass guitar.
Right. Wow.
Flawlessly, incredibly accurately fast. So I got a call from Wendy Dio to come in and during the middle of an Yngwie tour. To come in and record on Master of the Moon, and I had a commitment to finish the tour with Yngwie.
Mm-hmm.
So I told Wendy, well, I would love to, of course, love to join Dio, but I have a few more weeks to go here. So they went ahead and Jeff Tolson came in and recorded on Master of the Moon, and then when I was finished with my commitments with Yngwie, I let Wendy know, and that was 2004. And then I joined Dio.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Well, I can definitely understand how you'd want to record with Dio. First off, he's a total legend, and even though you've been blessed to play with so many legendary bands, probably more you than anyone else in hard rock history. You kind of a lot of times will join right after the record's done, or you kind of didn't get a chance to record, studio albums with Ozzy, and I mean, you did with Whitesnake, but not the first one and stuff. So, recording with Dio must have been great.
Yeah, we only got to record one track before he passed away.
Oh, wow.
That was I got to. My recordings with Dio come down to right now anything that's been released. It's the 2005 celebration of Holy Diver, the DVD and the companion CD. We got to record in the studio a kind of like a teaser track to the Magica 2 and 3 that he was planning on recording before he passed away, and it's a track called Electra, and it's been released as a bonus track on. I believe it's some compilation that came out actually before he passed away.
Wow.
So but we did a lot of demos. Mm-hmm. Getting ready for the follow-up Dio album. But some of those songs actually wound up being tracks for the Heaven and Hell album.
Oh, right.
Yeah. And I mean, they sounded great. Yeah, it was fantastic. I was very happy for Ronnie to actually go out there and tour and record with Heaven and Hell because of all the bands, we did talk about this. Of all the bands that he ever played with, the one that he always felt he had unfinished business with was Black Sabbath.
I can definitely imagine that because they had such great 2 records, and then that was that.
Well, actually, they had 3 albums.
Well, I meant in the original, the first. You're absolutely right, but I meant in the very, the '80s early '80s incarnation.
Yeah. They had the Holy Diver, Mob Rules, and Live Evil. This is a live record. But
right.
then they had Dehumanizer, which actually is one of the most underrated records.
Oh, you like that one a lot?
It's an incredible album, incredible songs too, and I love the sound of it.
Yeah,
that was Mac. Mac did that.
Oh.
He worked with Queen and so on. And he had a really raw, heavy, organic sound to it. Great songs too.
Right.
Well, and I mean, I when it comes down to to my time with Dio, I mean, boy, it was just incredible. It's just, just when I thought I had experienced everything as far as magic and, working with a legendary musician, along comes Ronnie, and he takes it to a whole different level.
I can imagine. And, you're one of the few people besides, some members of Black Sabbath to have, had both Ozzy and Dio as, as your frontman.
Yeah.
So that must have been something. I'm sure, Dio seems to, I would have to say if I had to pick my favorite, I would take Ozzy, but Dio seems like, just the control of the voice and the professionalism and all that must have been amazing. Well,
it's the way I look at it from working with both. I mean, Ozzy is such an accidental rock star, legend. Ozzy is Ozzy because he lives and breathes that. I don't think Ozzy really had a master plan on becoming Ozzy.
Right.
It's a very organic thing. Ozzy just gets up on stage and he just, I would say just about every night when I was on tour with Ozzy for Blizzard and Diary, you would hear him, kind of like a chant. He would say, I am doing it, I am doing it. He would be like on the corner of the dressing room, just rocking back and forth. He didn't want to go on because there's something, he would have to turn into the Ozzy that everybody knows on stage.
Right.
And it's not because people made him do that. That's just what happened.
Right.
So Ozzy on stage, and it's like, it's a whole different animal. It's like turning into a wolf man or something. It's like, it was unbelievable. Where Ronnie, it's different. Ronnie is a storyteller, and he will go on stage and personify the characters in the song.
Yeah.
Through his lyrics.
Right.
It's a whole different experience. Where Ozzy was almost on the verge of being chaotic, volatile on stage, madman. Ronnie was different. Ronnie was almost like a sage on stage.
Yeah.
And captivating the audience with his stories.
Definitely.
And all I had to do was just get myself inside of those songs, and go on his journey. And
Sure.
that was it, very, very simple, I mean, you can't really play a Dio song, or by that I mean a song that that Ronnie had a contribution, whether it would be Rainbow or Black Sabbath or Dio. You can't really play the song. You have to live the song to really capture the essence.
Interesting.
Of what you're doing. So that's the way that I approached it.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so obviously, I guess the Heaven and Hell beginnings took time away from Dio's working on his solo stuff.
Which gave me an opportunity to actually play with another band that had an incredible musical impact on me growing up, which was and that whole period, which is Blue Oyster Cult.
Yes, and not only that, they even kind of have a Rudy section in the live show, don't they? Where you kind of do a medley of.
That's Eric's shtick. He loves that part of the show. Eric is a really incredibly and is really underrated singer. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you listen to really early Blue Oyster Cult, man, my God, so some of the most incredible rock vocals ever recorded, came out of Eric Bloom. Yeah.
And Blue Oyster Cult were very big in the 70s. I mean, I don't think they translated to the MTV age, but I think, they've definitely have longevity because of the songs.
They were huge in the 70s and even early 80s. Matter of fact, one of I would say the first stadium show I ever did with Ozzy was 4th of July at Day on the Green, 1981, with Blue Oyster Cult headlining at the Oakland Stadium. Yeah.
Stadium headliners, wow.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, no, they were huge. I mean, they had Godzilla at the time, and by then, I believe they definitely had Burning for You, and I think the Reaper was out by then. I cannot give you the exact chronology of when those songs came out, but Godzilla was big enough.
Yeah.
That was it. That was the song that really put him,
I can
at
imagine
time.
that song working amazingly in a stadium setting too.
Well, what happened was that they had a shtick where now the bass solo, it happens in Godzilla. As a matter of fact, when I joined the band, they say, well, you're doing a bass solo in Godzilla. I haven't played bass solo since the 70s. The last band I played bass solo was the Randy Rhoads version of Quiet Riot.
Wow.
That was it. Because in the 80s, I mean, there was a drum solo and the guitar solo, but the bass solo wasn't really like the hip thing.
Right.
So, So basically, I said, okay, well, let me put something together here. And that's what you got. It was pretty much Eric Bloom's idea, to have that little section.
And Blue Oyster Cult is still going strong, and you're still doing lots of stuff?
Yeah. As a matter of fact, we're going back out in a couple of weeks and beginning our 2011 run.
Oh,
yeah,
awesome.
We're hitting the ground running. And
Very
also,
cool.
I've been doing these events called the Rock and Roll Fantasy Camp.
Oh, cool.
Which I start next week in New York City.
Oh, who are the other?
Are you familiar with those?
Yeah. You have a bunch of rock stars, and then they the campers kind of set up it, split up into groups, and then they have kind of like instruction and stuff like that.
Yeah, well,
Not really.
Yes and no. It's more elaborate than that. As a matter of fact, we have a reality show that will give you an idea of what actually goes on. It's been showing on VH1 Classic. It's a Mark Burnett production, so it's really, really well done.
Cool.
But if you don't, you can actually go on VH1 online and catch all the episodes.
Okay.
They're available online. So, you can actually, and it will give you a really good idea of what goes on at the real camps, the actual camp, not the camps on TV. But the reality show, it's basically they went in and they just capture what we actually did, what we actually do.
Oh, very cool.
At the camp. So it's a really, really good representation of but without the drama.
Right.
There's no crying at our rock and roll fantasy camp.
Who are the other musicians that are that are alongside you in the?
Oh my God! Yeah, well, our core is basically Kip Winger, Mark Hudson, Mark Fartner, and usually we have guys like Bruce Kulick. It kind of rotates depending on people's their commitments. If they happen to be on the road or whatever. Then we have Rami Jaffe from Foo Fighters. Let's see who else we have. Teddy Zigzag from Guns N' Roses. My God, and then as guest stars, we'll have guys like for example, we're going to have Roger Daltrey coming up in New York City next week, which I'm very excited to play with. We're going to have Leslie West. We've had like Dickie Betts be part of it. Meatloaf and Steven Tyler, Todd Rundgren. It's an incredible lineup.
Very cool. Definitely check that out on VH1.
Yeah. Oh. The one on VH1 we had Mark Anthony, Ace Frehley, we had Lita Ford, Bret Michaels, we also had Matt Sorum, and Kenny Aronoff was there too.
Nice.
And people really, once they do the camp, they get it. They know what it's all about, and you get basically addicted to being a part of it.
Wow, very cool. Well, I've taken up too much of your time already, but I do have one thing I wanted to bring up. You're a very diplomatic interview subject, but a friend of mine really wanted to know about this, and I kind of want to know about it too. The Ozman Cometh. I know you've had a good relationship with Ozzy and Sharon, but the Ozman Cometh credits you as Trudy Sarzo and misspells Daisley and Susan's names also. What's up with that?
Well, it's a conversation thing.
Yeah?
Yeah, I don't know. Once the artwork gets done, it gets done by people outside of the band. You have graphic designers and stuff like that. And I have to have my name in England spelled Rudi.
Yeah.
Many times, not just with Ozzy, but with other bands. So hey, listen. At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter as long as my bass track is still there.
Yeah. Which that would bring up a whole thing with Bob and Lee Kerslake's tracks on the first two Ozzy records for a while, but that wasn't in your department. But anyway, Rudy, you've been an excellent interview subject, and I really thank you for coming on my show.
Well, thank you, Steve. It's my pleasure, and I look forward to a lot of headbanging and to have you listeners come out and catch our shows.
Definitely. So Blue Oyster Cult in 2011, and Rock and Roll Fantasy Camp on VH1. They're gonna all check that out.
That's right.
All right. Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Happy New Year, Stevie, to you and your listeners.
Yeah, Rudy Sarzo, everyone, on Heavy Metal War Stories. How about that? Wow. Anyway, thanks so much for listening to another good episode. Love looking at where all my listeners are coming on. We get new ones every day, and they're popping up all over the world. Paraguay, Colombia, a lot in the Middle East, Scandinavia, and Europe's always huge. Lot in America. Not so much in Australia. What's up with you Australians? Anyway, email the show. Why not? dsdgods@gmail.com. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you like. Let me know what you want to hear. And we'll go from there. And you can catch all the episodes on iTunes, Heavy Metal War Stories, or heavymetalwarstories.com. And I don't usually pimp it much, but my band, Death Squad Demon Gods, why don't you check it out? You can check it out at deathsquaddemongods.com. And other than that, we will see you soon with another great guest and a lot more heavy metal. I've been Stevie Peavy, and you haven't.
Metal!